us when we're back in the chapel, we can read that prayer from Lenore. That would be lovely. It's very beautiful. Yeah, I was really taken with what you said about our connection to the land, connection to creation, and I think that's the wisdom that First Nations voices offer us, isn't it? Recently, the Lambeth Conference, which is a big gathering, Anglicans every decade or so, released a series of calls, invitations to the churches, and one of them was on the environment and sustainable development, and it was actually kind of launched at the start of the season of creation in September with a webinar that everyone was invited to. And in the context of that webinar, there was a Maori priest who spoke, Cynthia Murphy, her name is, and she shared some wisdom from her culture about the fact that the Maori word for earth or land is the same as the word for placenta, whenua, and just that beautiful image of being directly fed from Mother Earth as we're fed in the womb. It's such a wonderfully powerful image. And also the lovely Maori tradition of sharing the ha, the breath of life, when Maoris press noses, and just that bring to the foreground the fact that the breath of life is in us and through us and all around us and sustains us. And so there's this deep listening to the wisdom of, and I think it takes me back to something you said this morning, Ruth, about the book of Scripture and the book of nature, the little book and the big book, and Norman Harble, who's a South Australian theologian, he actually wrote the opening hymn that we sang this morning, back in 1991, mind you, and I'm sure, knowing Norm a little, had he written that 32 years later, he probably would have cast that second verse very, very differently, but he's a great theologian. And in the year 2000, he launched a series called the Earth Bible series. It's over 20 years old now, but it was so kind of cutting edge at the time. And the kind of interpretive key that this group of scholars bring to biblical text is to try to listen for the voice of creation as a subject in the biblical text, not as an object or a topic, and certainly not as a backdrop to human history, but to really listen deeply, as First Nations people show us how to do, to listen deeply for the wisdom and the voice of creation in the biblical text as a kind of hermeneutics of retrieval. And the symbol here of the creation, I don't know if you can see it at the back, but it's a big circle representing creation, and in the middle, the little book, the book of Scripture, is open, and underneath it, the earth is represented by the dot drawing. And Norm says that the goal of this project is to read the little book of Scripture from the perspective of earth, to read it from underneath. And so that's partly about reading against the grain of some of those texts that have been problematic, texts around dominion and subduing of creation, and to hear again those texts in which earth is crying out to be heard from a principle of eco-justice, if you like. So, the idea of the voice is so present to us at the moment, isn't it, in all sorts of ways. And so this is about trying to listen for that voice of earth that has been suppressed, not necessarily in the text itself, but certainly in the way we've read the text. We've tended to read the text, especially since the so-called Enlightenment. So if we really believe that God is somehow the author of both of these texts, both of these books, the big book of creation and the little book of Scripture, we've got to read those coherently, haven't we? They've got to make sense. We don't want God to be saying different things in those two books. So I think, what I'm reminded of in these days is that the priority of that deep listening for the voice and the wisdom of creation. And I think it's in a text in Job that I'll just share with you. And this was one that Cynthia Murphy shared on that webinar at the Lambeth Call. From Job chapter 12. Then Job replied sarcastically, "Doubtless you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you. But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In God's hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all humankind." So thank you for that gift, Kathy, of recalling us to that deep, deep listening